Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting for November 27th, 2023. Niagara Region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. As we begin, are there any disclosures of interest? Seeing none, we can move on to our first agenda item. That's the approval of the agenda. Can I get a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda, please? Member Spink. Oh, sorry, did you?
Could I just ask for one of our consent reports to be moved to the discussion portion of the agenda?
Yeah, there were already people, I was going to get to that.
Oh, okay, pardon me then.
Yes, absolutely. Let's start with the approval of the agenda. So I had a motion by Member Spink, seconded by Member Rady. Resolved that the agenda for November 27th, 2023 Public Works Committee meeting be approved. All in favor? It's carried. Next, we have receipt of previous minutes, October 30th, 2023. Can I get a mover and a seconder to receive the minutes? Member Murphy and Member Rady. Resolved that the October 30th, 2023 Public Works Committee meeting minutes be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we have no delegations, so we can move on to our consent reports. And there was, people wanted to lift one. Member Spink, you had mentioned one earlier.
Item 7.2, the annual salt management plan endorsement, please.
So 7.2 and then that was same one and 7.1. Okay. So there are no consent items. All right. So we can move on. So the okay, so Member Rady, you asked for 2327 to be lifted. Did you have questions related to that? Do I need a mover and a seconder to lift those, or
not
because,
to lift, just
okay.
When you go through the
Okay.
resolution.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. I realize the confidentiality of the report. Okay, so I won't do much of a dive other than I did see that we recognize we have 60 hazardous events. 17 exceeded the threshold. Are we confident that we've got those 17 under control, I guess is my question.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So we do a risk assessment as part of our QMS standard. Essentially, as a requirement, we have to identify risks, and we have to classify them as a risk threshold. So we establish that threshold based on our knowledge and experience of the system. Included in that risk assessment is all the factors that we use to mitigate those risks as well. So just because they exceed the threshold doesn't mean they're not under control. It just means that they're identified as a higher risk than the majority of the other ones, I guess is probably the best way of saying it. So yes, they are under control.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Are there any other questions related to 2327? Okay, I need a mover and a seconder to get 2327 on the floor, please. Brady, seconded by Councillor Howe. So resolved that report 2327, DPW 2327, DQMS risk assessment dated November 27th, 2023, be received for information. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. All right, next we have DPW 2330. Member Smink, you asked to have it lifted, so if you have some questions, and then I'll, if Councilor DeVoli has questions afterwards, we'll get down there.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. This plan came, I think, 1 month after we received the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority ground and surface water monitoring report. And unfortunately, Town of Grimsby and 40 Mile Creek, the road salt storage compound is actually named in that report. I think we can do better. Not contributing towards the high chloride levels, groundwater and surface water that we have here in town. I see a lot of management techniques that are best practice that are listed within this, but I did also see some specific things in terms of lack of pre-wetting. I didn't see information about quantities of salt use, and also there seemed to be maybe a desire, the next storage compound would have more salt management capabilities incorporated within it. What I just sort of wanted to ask was what else is planned, and when should we be expecting to see it? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Yes, so we are currently looking into the future for planning for our upgraded, if you will, or updated storage facility for our salt. I'm not sure of our exact timeline because it would be quite expensive for us to undertake that, obviously, as well as looking at potential for other locations for putting that. So yes, we are aware that it's not maybe in the most ideal situation where it's currently located, but that's sort of what we have currently based on the building that's there. It does meet a lot of best management practices for the current situation that it's in, with having a concrete floor and those types of things. We don't store anything outdoors. So basically upon what we have currently, we're meeting a lot of the best management practices, but we do have sort of that end goal down the road of having a better facility for storage that would actually incorporate some of the new technologies and things.
Further questions?
Just one that I forgot to ask. One of the things that you had said that was outstanding was identifying the environmentally sensitive areas. The one specific thing that I was thinking about was you have a excess snow storage at the south end of Bartlett where there's nothing. But it is relatively close to a watershed and also the, slope of the escarpment. I just would hope that we would be able to identify those areas just to make sure that we're not storing our excess snow in the wrong place. That's it.
Did you have any comments on that?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. No, just acknowledge that, yes, again, these are best management practices. We've identified them. What we're trying to do is ensure that our goal is to accomplish all the objectives that are identified by the environmental what's the title? No, the Canadian environmental and basically the tax standard. So we're certainly. This is a kind of a goal for us to ensure that we're meeting that in the future. Understanding that we've identified certain items in there that we're not currently meeting those objectives, but we wanted to make sure that we're being clear and transparent that they are on our horizon for making improvements in the future. As Thomas mentioned, just to kind of build on his comment about the actual sand dome. At some point in time in the future, we'll have to look at how we can incorporate a new facility. Likely won't be in that same location. The facility will likely have help us meet a lot of these conditions that we're not currently meeting. So proper wash down area of our trucks, removing the fact that we're in an environmentally sensitive area in terms of where the trucks are in relating to, or where the sand dome is in relating to the 40 Mile Creek, and so on. So hopefully that answers your question.
Councillor DeVoley, did you have questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, my questions were very much along the same lines as my fellow member here. And I, won't belabor the point by going through each of them. Certainly when I read the report and I look at our current situation in that particular column, the first thing that comes to mind is to control our risks, and therefore I look at all the things that have X's beside them. And so thank you for those answers and for expanding upon that, and so I won't go through all the X's in my questions. I think at the same time, it's probably a good time to also recognize that we have lots of check marks too, right? And the check marks far outnumber the X's. That doesn't mean that we don't always have some areas to improve in, but the good news is we have lots of check marks here, and I think we should remember that too, and take that into account. But really, that just summarizes my comments, piggybacking on my fellow members' comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeVoley. Any further questions? Yeah. Member Murphy?
Just one, I'm just curious as to an example of the hazards. I found that interesting, that there are 60 hazardous events and 17 exceeded the risk. What's an example of a hazard? Oh, sorry.
Are you referring back to the drinking water report?
Yes.
Oh, so
Yes.
the previous report. The previous report that we were dealing with. Okay.
Yeah, somehow I thought we were still on.
Yeah, no, so what are some examples of hazards? Contamination of drinking water, backflow prevention, that kind of stuff.
It's been chlorine levels in the past.
Chlorine levels, stagnant water, that kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, so to make people feel a little bit more comfortable with the water one, it's constantly tested, constantly under scrutiny, and the levels we're talking about are sometimes because of where they are on the in the line. In my experience, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because there are dead ends in water lines and things like that where you might get a buildup of chlorine levels and things like that. But I had a question about the item 30. So what would the next steps be from a Public Works perspective as far as, so we've acknowledged that there are deficiencies and issues with our system. Not huge, not like, again, there are lots of positives, but the location is one that's very difficult to change. So is it, if it was a washdown station, have we looked at the pricing of these types of things? Have we looked at, have we considered what the next steps would be and what the costing of that would be? So that we're looking long-term, even if it's 10 years down the line?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So I don't think we've necessarily looked at every sort of option for what the full cost of a washdown station would be or a full facility that it would require. So, the cost would be quite high for sure. But as far as identifying what's in here, the important thing is, again, this is a document that's put out there saying, here's the best practice of how we can handle these things. It doesn't offer necessarily the answer for how to deal with all of them. It's just sort of saying, here's the identified issues and how are we going to deal with them. But this document really is kind of our roadmap for how we're going to get to that location. So we've identified where we currently aren't meeting those needs, and then through some of our other programs that we have in place, we're slowly trying to, trying to pick away at these things and improve our program moving forward. As far as, though, to answer your question on the actual cost of it, I mean, it would be quite expensive, especially when we get to like a full new salt storage area, truck washdown area that would have like a sodium chloride removal system to get all the wash water cleared before it's dumped into the storm system. So these are big systems. These are very, very expensive systems that we're talking about here. So the fact that we're not meeting all of these best management practices is okay. And as the councillor pointed out earlier, we do have a lot of check marks, not as many X's, but year over, we're slowly chipping away at them and working on this.
Thank you. And I'd be curious to know how many municipalities are actually meeting those standards, and because you'd have to have some economies of scale, for example, to be able to afford having a truck wash station for the number of trucks that we have doesn't really meet those kinds of economies of scale that you would have. So I'd like to know what other municipalities are doing too, and how close they are to meeting them, so we know where we compare. Because those X's that you talk about, they might be the same X's that every municipality in Ontario has, every municipality in Canada has, because while they are best practices, they are things you'd like to have, not things that you will necessarily have in the short term. So if you were rebuilding, you would include them, but not something you would have in the short term. Anyway, that would be, if that information was out there, it would be interesting to have a comparator. Anyway, any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, I need a mover and a seconder to get DPW 2330 annual salt management plan on the floor. I got Councillor Howe and Member Smink. Resolve that report DPW 2330 2324 annual salt management plan endorsement dated November 27th, 2023 be received, and that the current revisions of the plan dated November 2023 be endorsed by council. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right. Next, we have we have discussion reports, item 8 on the agenda, DPW 2326. Starting with the 2023 drinking water QMS management review. Could I please get a mover and a seconder to get the item on the floor for discussion? Councillor DeVoli, seconded by Member Murphy. Okay, somebody from Public Works going to take us through that? Thomas, is that you?
Yeah, thank you through your chair. So the report in front of you here, our drinking water QMS management review, is basically a summary report of a meeting that takes place on an annual basis. It's one of the requirements under the drinking water quality standard for anyone who operates a drinking water system. So this is our opportunity to review our quality management system as it applies to drinking water, to see where it's working, where maybe it's not working, identifying any risks or potential issues that we could foresee, allowing us an opportunity to look at the financials and make any sort of requests into council if we see issues or think that might be funding lacking in certain areas. It's also our opportunity to share that information to the owners of the system or their representatives, which is council, and that's what brings us here tonight. So the meeting that we had this year definitely, has been as productive as usual. It identified a few strengths, a few weaknesses. One just identified weakness being we're looking at our forecasting in potentially losing some senior level employees down the road. So we're starting to think about how we're going to fill those gaps and, the potential of maybe having to hire in some extra operator in training or lower level technicians to work on our water system when we do lose our senior staff. It's a very hard market out there to try and find good quality trained staff in that market. So we're looking at that. Also, we look at some sort of, some other, issues or potential risks or burdens on the system, that being the demand on staff for some other programs that are coming in. We do have a new CLICA program, which is basically a similar type of thing to drinking water, but for storm and for sanitary. and that's going to be putting a big demand on our compliance group. So we kind of identified that as well as an area we need to focus on and kind of come up with a strategy for how we can ensure that it doesn't impact the delivery of our drinking water.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor DeVoley?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I guess my question is to Mr. Hodgson. So, of course, as soon as we talk about in the financial impact, as soon as we talk about increasing the number of staff, the antenna go up. And I guess my first question is, which year are we thinking of this? Will it have an impact on 2024's budget, 2025? Could you just expand upon your thinking there?
Yep, through you, Chair. I think where our thinking is right now, we're probably looking into the 2025 year. We do have a full complement now. We're not looking, or we're not anticipating losing any staff over the next several years, so we're kind of looking maybe 2-3 years out down the road. It does take some time to get someone trained through the OIT system to get them the years of service or time that's needed, the training that's needed, as well as the courses that are required in order to become an operator. So we're trying to keep that in mind too. We don't want to leave it too late where we're going to be short operators and put a bigger pressure on staff. But probably more the 2025, 2026 timeline is what we're looking at.
Councillor DeVoley?
If I could just continue, so thank you. We'll be waiting for something, I guess, in the 2025 budget to be talking about this again. The second recommendation talks about increasing the number of water sample stations. And again, kind of a similar question. What is the impact to us financially? How many would we conceivably be thinking about? Who would be doing them? What would our potential costs be? And what year might we be thinking about this? And then I have one last question on the third one after that.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Chair. So the identified, I guess not really an issue, but something that's come up, it's been through our ministry audits where they've identified some areas within the town where we could install new sample stations just to give us a better distribution throughout the community. A lot of that has to do with just as the community's been growing and developments have been going up in newer areas, we've got populations located in different areas. As far as our timeline and the costs for that, I believe we've estimated under $100,000 to add in. Were we doing 12 new ones? 6 new sample stations within our system. And again, spreading those out to just give us a better spread throughout the community. It also offers us the ability to rotate where we're sampling. We wouldn't have to sample from all of them on a weekly basis, but it would give us the ability to rotate around where we are just to make sure that we're getting a good idea of how the system is operating.
And so are we thinking to implement this in 2024?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just to add, sorry, I was looking up the budget my proposed budget. So we're about 60,000. We identified as a cost for the project. We're trying to focus where we can, having our own internal staff do the installation where possible to help minimize some of those external costs, and where we can't, we'll be bringing in some contractors to help out. So the cost would be basically coming out of the, if accepted, from the 2024 capital project budget, which is funded from the water reserves. Ideally, it'd be nice to have this done next year. Is it critical that it all happens next year? No, but certainly we'd like to at least get a head start on it.
Go ahead, Councillor DeVoley.
And then my last question, which maybe is a comment rather than a question. The third recommendation is to support the implementation of the CLI ECA. And at our October 26th finance meeting, we did approve the additional cost after it had gone out to tender. So I guess we can say that council has definitely already agreed to that third recommendation. And that's all my questions.
Thank you. Other questions from members of the committee? Yeah, Member Rady.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I caught something in here about backwater valves and someone refused to even do business with us. Can you elaborate on, is this to the homes, or is this a larger back water valves?
Through you, chairs. So I think what you're referring to is a backflow preventer.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so as a part of the system in town, we do have a backflow prevention bylaw actually where they are installed. I'm not sure specifically of which property or which one you're identifying that has refused to work with us. If it's a property or a business, I'm not sure, but we have a program in place whereby, depending upon what the occupancy is of a certain facility or building, the types of equipment that are in there, there's certain parameters about which types of devices need to be in there, and basically in order to ensure that there isn't a backflow event where there could be contaminated water getting back into the drinking water supply.
Does that answer your question, Marie?
Sort of. I see it's an action item assigned to Mr. Marconato. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, for, I believe, February. So generate a work plan for updating backflow prevention bylaw and program. Is that what you're referring to, Thomas? If it helps, it's item 5 on the recommended actions.
I think you got it? You got it?
Sorry, yeah, so through you, Chair. So so what we're looking at there is actually updating the current bylaw that we have, as well as the program we have in place to actually add a little more clarity to us and to actually allow us to enforce it a little bit more. So right now it's difficult or maybe a bit confusing upon when we require a backflow device and when we don't require one. We're looking at changing things so that we don't get into an area where it's kind of gray and changing based upon occupancy. We're looking at trying to get it on the base level of when construction's happening and requiring a minimum standard, as opposed to looking at what the occupancy is and then determining what's required, because it's really hard to go back and ask an occupant, hey, you need to install this now, where it would be a lot cheaper and easier to do it from the construction phase. So that's what we're looking at there.
Sorry, just to add to that. So essentially, in our current bylaw, we do allow exemptions for certain occupancies. And I guess what we're saying is, as a minimum, if you're a commercial requirement or you're an industrial building, you would require a device as a minimum. There'd be no exemption. So it's basically saying that we want to expand it, be more stringent in our requirements.
Thank you.
Any further questions from members of the committee? So when you're talking about losing senior employees, I'm assuming that you're talking about like succession planning, training the next level down, so that there's always somebody to fill those positions, which is something we should be doing across the board anyway. And I'm glad to hear that that's the plan. And if there are costs associated with that, the costs are costs we won't have to incur having to train brand new people or having to, go out into the market and compete against other municipalities for these employees. So we want to constantly be training new employees, constantly be keeping people in-house. That's how you build capacity within the system, instead of having to try to steal people from other municipalities in the long run. So we want to build a family of Grimsby people where people continue to move up and continue to move into the position left behind by other people. So I'm happy to hear that we're doing that. Mr. Warden?
Sorry, just to add, so on that point, we currently have 7 operators. The issue that we could see is if we lose 2 of those operators, we're down to 5 now. And the issue is we don't have anyone to jump in and step into that, into that role. So what we had considered and what we had been talking about, again, for the future, is the possibility of bringing in an operator in training role, so adding to our roster by 1 spot to allow that person to become trained, so that when we lose the other operators through attrition or retirement, that would allow us to bring that person into the fold, and then with the potential of removing that OIT position in the future. So it's a temporary roster addition for a few years to make sure that we were addressing our aging workforce, and then potentially removing those positions in the future to once they kind of transition out. I get that was our current line of thinking, anyways.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The only concern, of course, is that you're training people that then go get jobs somewhere else. So we have to retain those people too. So creating a work environment where people want to stay and all the other things that we do, hopefully as a municipality, keep people in Grimsby. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Resolved that I have a motion moved by Councillor Davoli, seconded by Member Murphy. Resolved that report DPW 2326 2022-23 Drinking Water QMS Management Review dated November 27th, 2023 be received for information. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Next, we have report DPW 2328. That's the 2022-2023 Roads QMS Management Review. Can I please get a mover and seconder to get this item on the floor for discussion? Councillor Kristanji, and seconded by Member Rady. Somebody from Public Works staff like to start us off on that one? You again?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So this report, again, is very similar to the one we just had. So here in Grimsby, we're lucky to have a roads quality management system, too. It's something that's kind of unique to the region, and I'm not sure if anyone else really has one, but it's basically modeled off of the drinking water quality management standard we put in place for the transportation system as well. So again, as a part of that, we do have an annual requirement in our standard to have a management review, and again, it offers us an opportunity to just look at our system as a whole, collect all the people that need to be in the room to make the decisions about, how things are performing, where we can find efficiencies, or where maybe we're lacking in certain areas. So again, this meeting took place. Again, we, were able to identify some gaps where we want to improve on some training and some things like that. I would just hazard to say that our roads quality standard is not as robust or as evolved as the drinking water one. It's sort of the one that we are building as we go, but it's just the fact that it is an unregulated quality standard. It doesn't have the requirement that the drinking water one does.
Thank you. Any questions? Member Spink and then Member Rady.
I think I'm a road sign kind of person. So when you say that you're unable to determine some of the levels of service for the road sign repair, or that you'll be able to meet those, that concerns me a bit, especially ones where that they're essential signs. Really, I see the answer being in here, but without a timeline. The CMMS system that you're implementing, I just want to have an update on time frame. That would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So the timeline for the CMMS, actually just earlier today, we kind of passed the next sort of hurdle in that, passing our UAT testing. So we're going into the training phase and then implementing in our transportation. So the system is live now, and some staff are using it. We're kind of going through a bit of a trial run while we're kind of mimicking both systems in place just before we kind of make a full flip over. But it's definitely looking promising, and we're definitely hopeful that some of the issues that we have had with sort of our data in the past that has led to some of our concerns about whether or not we were meeting certain requirements are definitely going to be mitigated with the new system.
I'm hoping that next year when we get this report, it's going to reflect that. I just see such an importance, particularly, you'll know it's on my calendar. But I just see particular in terms of litigation, it's just so important to be able to have all of the data there, and also be able, in terms of your management, you'll be able to do everything much more efficiently. I'm really glad that the town invested in that kind of a system, and you're investing your time as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Rady.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're regretting showing up tonight, aren't you, Thomas? But let me preclude that by saying there's a lot of work has been done here in reports over the last month. So Ben, well done. And I know you guys had to read them as well, so thank you for that, really, honestly. So I'm the IT guy, so you know where my questions are going. The EDLs, the electronic data loggers. So there's a lot of people that offer this as a service, right? So the particular vendor that we've selected for CMMS, do they have experience interfacing with, you know, somebody like TELUS, for example, or somebody who does EDL work that would make that easier for us to do an implementation, or are we going to be writing the book as we go?
Through you, Chair. So currently, there is not a plan to put in an EDL system with the town right now. That's not to say we don't plan on doing so. I think it's the right step to do, but the current CMS system we're putting in place does not have a EDL within its current system. Whether or not it could integrate with what we would do in the future, I would say most likely it could through a backend, through an API. That being said, there are lots of systems out there that, you know, we do have some staff that have been trialing ones just to see how they work and how they're going. But with the CMS system coming on, staff are going to have the hardware required to make those things work, whereas previously we haven't had staff with all the hardware to make it work. So I think that would be a step we're looking at in the near future. And, you know, what that's going to look like, I'm not sure, but that's definitely something that's on our horizon for sure.
Any further questions from members of the committee? Councillor DeVoli?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure where I read this because the reports were very comprehensive and had lots of information in them. So mine is a really easy question, though. How many kilometers of roads do we own and take care of?
Through you, Chair, I'm probably going to get the number a bit wrong here, but I believe the town has approximately 170 lane kilometers of road and 92 sidewalk. Don't quote me on those numbers, but it's close.
Hey, you know what? Find out the answer and bring it to us the next time. That answer's out there somewhere. Because it's a good question, and it would make a good did you know for the Town of Grimsby Facebook page. You know that the Town of Grimsby has 170 kilometers of roads and 92 kilometers of sidewalks that we maintain during the wintertime or something along those lines. And then, of course, we'll get some trolls that have negative things to say about that, but that's okay. Any other questions or comments from members of the group? Oh, member Rady?
I'll give you a hint. You've already answered this question. You did a presentation to council, and you did a presentation to us at the beginning of this, and those statistics are in there. So go grab that page, or I think there was 2 pages, and you defined all the kilometers and the number of streetlights, et cetera, et cetera. So there's your tip for the day.
Oh, baby Brandon's got it.
175.
175. So close. Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Stangi, second. Oh, Councillor Howe, sorry, I missed you.
I was late. Through you, Chair. Section M refers to resources needed to maintain the quality system. Results 2022, a budget of $7,000, not much, but it's at the end of the sentence, provision for internal audit by an outside consultant. Couple of times through the different reports, that's the only place where there's a suggestion of an outside. Everything's been inside or internal audits, which, is there a time when you do go outside? And, you know, I've got somebody sitting beside me that, you know, being the accountant, certainly understands audits and the reasons for them. They're never a negative, just, you know, part of the toolbox. So do we do that frequently, or do we try to keep most of it internal, or?
Through you, Chair. So it's maybe just a naming convention how it is, but so again, under the quality standard, there is what's an internal and an external audit. So again, because the system was mapped after the drinking water quality standard, they have an internal and external. The external being a third party that's been basically assigned by the ministry in order to carry out those audits, and internal being, it could be someone in-house doing it. However, we've always gone with an external third party to perform our internal audit. So it's basically a system check you're doing prior to your other audits. So when we got to the road side of things, there is no requirement for an external audit because there is no actual road quality standard built, but we've followed basically our pattern from the drinking water side, and we hire the same consultant to come in and audit our system. So we just refer to it as an internal audit, but it's by an outside consultant.
If I may, Chair. So, but you frequently, I guess, if you had said peer review, because you use that term from time to time through Public Works. So basically the same idea, peer review of the audit?
So I think that if I could, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there is a legal requirement for the water management system because of Walkerton and all of the regulations that were put in place. We use the word audit, but I think that what you're asking, Councillor Howe, is it kind of more of a peer review when it comes to the roads management system?
Through you, Chair. So, I mean, yes, I guess yes and no. So it is an audit that we have structured where here is the system we have in place. We send our standard to the external party, and they come in and do a full and fulsome review of records, of our procedures, of everything that we're doing. So I would say it's an audit and it's not a peer review.
Sorry, just to maybe add some further clarity, it's almost a self-audit. We're hiring someone to audit ourselves for that purpose. In the drinking water side of things, we have both the self-audit that we hire a consultant to do, and we also have an external audit where the Ministry of Environment comes in and does an inspection as well. So I think that's the main difference.
Thank you. I think we're done with questions. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Gristangi, seconded by Member Rady. Resolved that report DPW 2328, 2223 Road QMS Management Review dated November 27th, 2023 be received for information. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Next, we have report DPW 2329, 2023 Road QMS Operation Plan Endorsement. Can we get a mover and a seconder to put these on the floor? Councillor Howe and Councillor Davoli. Someone from Public Works? You really drew this short straw tonight, eh, Thomas? All right.
It happens once a year. Through you, Chair. So this report will probably make more sense now that we've talked about some of the other things tonight, but this effectively is the report sort of outlining the endorsement for our operational plan, and that basically is the elements that we've set up to be our quality management system, basically. So when I say elements, again, off of the drinking water, they've identified sort of 21 elements that a quality management plan must have in it. Our road system, we haven't used all 21. Again, we look at probably expanding on and building it down through the future, but we sort of tried to hit the ones that made the most sense for us in the beginning. So the report here is basically outlining how we are going to perform our transportation system. So it really is outlining here's our OGs that we're going to use, here's the system procedures, the different types of things that we are going to be doing in order to maintain our quality standard, in order to maintain our transportation network.
Okay, any questions about that one? All right, resolved that, I've got a motion moved by Councillor Howe, seconded by Councillor Davoli. Resolved that report DPW 2329, 2023 Roads QMS Operation Plan Endorsement dated November 23rd, 2023 be received for information, and that Council endorse the current revision of the Roads QMS Operational Plan dated November 2023, and that the Mayor be authorized to sign the current revision of the Roads QMS Operation Plan, and that Council re-endorse the existing Roads QMS policy statement. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Next, item 8.4, DPW 2331, 2023-2024 Annual Winter Control Manual Endorsement. Can I get a mover and a seconder to put these items on the floor? Member Rady and Councillor Gristangi. Staff, want to start us off again? Tom?
Yep, so through you, Chair. So the report in front of you here is our report basically looking to highlight our winter control manual, and by that it's, this is the ways in which town staff will be maintaining the transportation network throughout the winter. So it highlights what our level of service to the community is going to be, and we're looking for this committee and council to endorse that.
Thank you. Questions? Member Spink?
I was a little confused about where we're being asked to endorse. I know that the report that I received said that there was an Appendix A, which was the winter control manual, which I thought we were supposed to be endorsing. I didn't receive it. I think perhaps it was sent out late this afternoon and I didn't receive it. I find it a little difficult to say I'm endorsing something I haven't seen, but we're just about to get snow. So, you probably do need that endorsement in order to be able to, function. Is it true?
Through you, Chair. So effectively, I guess I would say without having this one endorsed, we would just operate according to last year's, which is, the same without some minor updates. But what our winter control manual is and what we're looking for the endorsement of, once you have an opportunity to look through it, basically it's just outlining what is our winter procedures for everything, what are our snow routes, how do we do patrols, when do we put plows out on the road versus not, what rates do we apply, salt, sand, those types of things. So it's really just it's a manual that our staff use for how they're going to apply all of our operating guidelines throughout the winter. But it's also an opportunity for yourselves and for council to kind of understand what our level of service is, what are we proposing to do for the community, understanding that, a higher level of service obviously comes with more costs, and if a lesser level of service would reduce costs. Sorry, just to finish that statement, the only last thing I would say is, these aren't things that we've just sort of come up with. We are following the maintenance standard. We are following a set of guidelines on what is the minimum requirement. But I would say that the town of Grimsby and our staff here far exceeds what those minimum requirements are.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I would say I've always been quite impressed by the winter control in town, and sidewalks are exceptional. I just know too much. Honestly, that's really the problem. Like my question was, at what temperature below zero do you stop using salt? Is one of my questions. There's some, and I can read that if I just receive it. Yeah, that's about it.
Sorry, just to clarify, there was an error on our part in terms of making sure that the appendix, it was a large file, and it didn't transfer by email, so we actually had to point it on our network, say, here's the file, and then it got updated. So I understand that that's what the issue was, is it didn't transfer over email. So it is there now. If it's in the committee's interest, we're happy to wait until a future date if a committee needs some time to review that and provide some comments.
Yeah, Councillor Davoli?
I do have a few questions and comments, but I'll start sort of with that one that we're still thinking about here. Is it possible to approve it conditional upon, any questions coming back to the committee next month? Would that help? I'm just looking for a compromise or some way to make the thing go forward. I'll ask for your thoughts on that.
Go ahead.
Through you, Chair. So the options here would be to either defer it until the next one, or if you pass it today, you would also, I believe, be able to reconsider it if something comes up that you folks see it and are like, no, you would have the option to bring it back for reconsideration as well. I believe that would just require a 2/3 vote from this committee, but that option is available for you. Building on what Brandon had said, we issued the addendum this afternoon because our drives were actually down this morning. So we had an interesting morning here. So our apologies again, though, for that oversight.
Yeah, so, I mean, every approval we give is conditional, because anything can be brought back if there are enough votes for it. So it's up to the committee. I'll do whatever the committee believes to be the right thing. So we have a mover and a seconder for this one. If people strike it down, we can, if people want to change it to deferral, that's fine. If people are comfortable with passing it and then bringing it back, if there are any concerns, I'm fine with that as well. Okay, so we'll receive it and then move forward and then bring it back if there are any concerns about it. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Okay. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Councillor. No more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I was trying to find an answer to our conundrum there. So, of course, one of the things that is noted in this report is that the town of Grimsby is very nicely going to be taking care of the sidewalks up to West Niagara Secondary School and to St. John's, which, of course, is, I guess, that stretch there is technically within the town of Lincoln. And so that's my first question, just to ask our Public Works to comment about, I guess, what we're going to call some I don't know if cost, yeah, some neighborly goodwill. I maybe even cost sharing is not the appropriate term, but I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So I don't think we've actually discussed anything about cost sharing at this point. This was more of understanding a need there. The connections with the particular sidewalks that we're looking at doing connect with Grimsby. They don't actually connect into Lincoln at all with sidewalks. So it makes a lot of sense for our staff to just sort of continue that little piece down the road. Now we are putting in place like a memorandum of understanding with Lincoln just for what we'll be covering, that it will be covered under our winter standard, not under Lincoln's winter standard, just so that it's understood. I believe with the schools being located where they are with the new high school, I'm sure that Lincoln is looking at how they can connect from their side as well. So this is sort of a temporary, hey, we understand that there's a need here. The residents of Grimsby are using those sidewalks to access those schools, so we're going to provide that service. I think it just works out, for the betterment of everybody.
And I think, of course, because we're always thinking in terms of risk, is that it is important to clarify that arrangement with them so that if something should happen, we know which insurance policy is going to kick in, et cetera, right? My second comment, I guess, really has to do with our policies on snow plowing and things like that, but maybe it's just a comment on my part, is that when I see all the various pieces of legislation and so on that we have to comply with, and so I guess I'm going to say the words and then ask you to confirm if I'm understanding this correctly or not, but my understanding, and truly from living here, just like with my fellow member here, is that we definitely meet all the minimum requirements and in many, many cases exceed those standards as well. And you're nodding yes, so I'm taking that as something very good. And I think that's a really good takeaway to share with the people in our community that, when it comes to road maintenance, snow clearing, and all those things like that, that we exceed the standards that are mandated to us. And this is a really good news story to remember, right? And then related to that, of course, I was just going to ask you to expand upon our snow plowing and parking cars on the sides of roads and so on. I notice we have ads that we put in the newspaper advising people about this, and I'm I guess, really giving you the floor and asking if you would just like to publicly talk about that to remind all our residents what our policies are on that.
Yeah, so through you, Chair. So we do have policies. I believe there's a bylaw in place about parking on the roadways during winter. We do try to communicate out to the community when we do know there's an incoming snowstorm. We do have a pretty good forecasting, so we know when things are coming. And really, it's just a matter of keeping it safe for everyone out there. I mean, try navigating some roads through Grimsby in a regular car. It can be quite narrow with vehicles parked on both sides. So now we're asking staff to go out there with a big 5-ton plow truck with blades attached to it. It's not safe, for them, pedestrians or drivers out there, if we do have roads overly congested. So it's really just a matter of ensuring that staff are able to do their job safely. And as well, when there's a lot of parked cars, it makes it difficult to actually remove that snow. We've all seen streets that are, cleared down the middle, and then all the parked cars leave, and you've got huge drifts on the side that staff weren't able to get to, usually overnight or during the day when they're there. So I'm not sure Brandon might be able to speak a bit more.
Sorry, I was just through you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to say that, our bylaw enforcement, we take a bit of a friendly approach, start by, giving an advance notice of, hey, snow's coming, this is a problematic area, we'd like you to work with us by getting your vehicles off the road. And then from there, they're usually pretty good about moving the vehicles, but we do have challenges from time to time, and our operations staff have good communications process with our bylaw enforcement in terms of identifying, hey, we're having an issue here, we can't get the truck through. The bylaw officers will attend the site and issue a ticket or removal if needed, and then from there we can come back and complete the route. So I think we've been a little bit more proactive in getting ahead and getting it out, notices out to the residents in advance to help reduce some of those friction points of, obviously we don't like to tow vehicles or to ticket people, so we try to reduce those where we can.
And I guess to add on to that is you talked about roads where there's parking on both sides and then they can only make one pass down the middle. So is the work that we're envisioning to be done in our transportation master plan also going to be looking at some of these same issues?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So our roads master plan is going to look at a lot of things, and on-street parking will be one of those components. Certainly, when we talk to parking permitted on both sides of the roads, it can be problematic in terms of it's a narrow space for vehicles to get through. Our roads are designed primarily to accommodate one side of parking with 2 lanes of traffic. So it's something that we'll be looking at through that transportation master plan of, what is our current policies, where are there areas that we can improve upon them, and keeping in mind there are certain areas of town that are, hot spots in terms of pressures that we see with parking on both sides of the road, and we try to address those in a timely manner as they come up.
Thank you. And further to your comments, Councillor Davoli, about the quality of the snow removal in Grimsby, I can tell you that as somebody who works in Hamilton, where sidewalks are not plowed by the municipality, the standard is only as good as the person who owns the home. So I've had kids in wheelchairs in my class where, and ironically in Hamilton, some of the worst plowed properties are the municipally owned properties, because they get cleaned, they get walked on and then don't get cleaned. So I've had to take kids in wheelchairs on the road to get around municipal properties, because there were, people had walked through and kind of built a little glacier with their walk through, and then a kid in my class with a wheelchair, we'd have to take them on the road to get through. So I'm happy with the system. It costs a little bit more in Grimsby. We pay for it. We pay for the sidewalk snow removal, but it does allow us to ensure quality across the town and safety across the town. So those are really important things. Aside from, active transportation and other things that allows people to continue to do even during the winter, it does ensure a quality uniformity across the town. So I'm happy that we're doing that. And as you said, the issue of the West Niagara Secondary School, I mean, the region should have known that, and the board should have known that, but it is Grimsby kids, and we want to keep them safe. So we want to make sure that that little bit of sidewalk that goes from Grimsby to Lincoln there, being used entirely by Grimsby residents, is maintained and safe in the wintertime. So if that's a little bit of a cost that we have to incur, we can give the region heck for it, for putting the school where they allowed it to go. But whatever that is, we're going to end up making sure it's safe in the long run to guarantee that it's safe. So I have a motion moved by Member Rady, seconded by Councillor Kristanji. Resolved that DPW 2331, 2023-24 Annual Winter Control Manual endorsement dated November 27th, 2023 be received, and that the current revision of the plan dated November 2023 be endorsed by council. All in favor? That is carried. Correspondence, we have a petition from residents regarding Burgess Drive. Can I get a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor for discussion? Councillor Howe and Member Smink. Okay, any discussions on this? Brandon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to give a quick verbal update to committee on this matter. So this staff received a petition from the residents on Burgess Drive with regards to on-street parking. The petition came as a result of notices that we were circulated to the residents in the neighborhood, and it was concerning parking changes on Redwood and McNabb and Governor's area. So basically, the petition is flagging concerns with those changes that were being proposed on those streets and the impact they might have on the residents on Burgess. So obviously a copy of the petition is included with the agenda. Staff have reviewed the petition and have met with the local councillors for the area, as well as our Public Works Chair. We discussed changes that could be that are being proposed and have agreed with the path forward. So staff will be bringing a report forward to the Public Works Committee at a later date to update the committee further on the parking changes in this area. So just a verbal update that I didn't want it to leave that we've ignored this petition. We have received it, and that the resolution before you basically is asking committee to acknowledge receipt and refer the matter back to staff to prepare a report in the future, which we will do.
Any further questions? Or, yeah, Member Spink?
Certainly, I think that's a great idea if the staff come back with their recommendations. I hope that they could include both parking regulations as well as enforcement. Some of the people I curl with happen to live on Burgess, so I called them this weekend and was out there at 8:30 this morning and 4 o'clock this afternoon, so I can see some of the issues, and I'd be glad to speak to you about it. But I think it's a combination of things, and I think our chair was very prescient when you were saying if you take parking off of one thing, you're just moving it up to another area, because that's what we're getting right now. Yeah.
Thank you, Member Spink. And yes, it is an ongoing concern when you're just pushing the problem to the next street and to the next street after that. And that was part of our discussion. Councillor Kristanji?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I'm just going to touch on that because I know where it's going to go next. It's going to go to Brookside, off Linwood and that, because there's already been many complaints. So I would just like to, I know that this is one particular area, but as you look at this area, can we look at where we're diverting that to put it in place so that we're just not, again, getting another petition because that one's going to be started and that. Thank you.
Just to add through you, Mr. Chair, the current proposal is we're trying to accommodate the parking in that area, so we're not diverting it other. We're not pushing the problem in elsewhere. Also, just to add to a good point is, again, going back to our transportation master plan, we've recognized that parking in this setting, because it's close to a hospital with paid parking, it's probably the only paid parking in town. I might be wrong in that, but it doesn't occur very often. There is pressures on the surrounding streets for accommodating the persons who don't want to pay for parking, or if there's a parking shortage, that kind of thing. So as part of the transportation master plan, we really want to look holistically at that area, in particular in relation to what our current policies are, and look at on a more broad perspective of are we taking the right approach with the different situations that we have here. So the report coming forward will deal with this specific issue, but we also have an eye to the future on how we can accommodate this going forward in a larger sense, I guess.
Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Howe, seconded by Member Smink, that the Burgess Drive petition from residents be received for information, and that the Public Works Committee recommend council give staff direction to provide a report back to the Public Works Committee with further information and recommendations. All in favor? That's carried. Next, are there any items of new business, other business pertaining to committee? I've got Member Smink and then Member Rady.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I was just hoping that I could get an update on two of the major projects. You've mentioned several times this evening the Transportation Master Plan. I was hoping that you would give us an update on whether a consultant has been chosen, and if so, if you have a starting date, and then I have a follow-up to that.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. The request for proposal went out a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I believe it closes before the Christmas break. Likely be reviewing proposals after the Christmas break and making a decision early in January. Idea is we want to get that started right away. Our intent is, our hope is to have that done before the end of 2024. We understand it's a long process, so we're eager to get that moving. So yeah, we're looking at early in the year to get that awarded.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, I also just wanted to follow up on the Downtown Reimagined. I was informed, and rather late through the newspaper, that there are two meetings this week, and if you could just let us know what is happening.
Perfect. Thank you for cueing me on that, because I was going to put my hand up. So, yeah, so I apologize. Notices were sent out a bit late. We're kind of up against the Christmas break here. We've tried to make sure that these are at the forefront, but we were a little late getting the notices out, so I apologize for that. But we have one meeting tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock, I believe it starts, at the Peach King Auditorium. And that's to deal with phase 2 of the parking study. We've sent out notices to all of the businesses last week, businesses and surrounding residents of the surrounding area for both the, the Grimsby on the Lake area and as well as the downtown core. And then the follow-up meeting, another meeting this Thursday evening at, I believe that's 6:30. And this one is for the Downtown Reimagined project. And this one will be located at Fire Station 2 or Fire Hall number 2 on Mountain Road. Both of them are public information centers, so they're kind of a drop-in, and we have some boards that will speak to the residents about. So we encourage people to come out and visit, and we can be happy to talk and receive the public's input into both of those projects.
Member Rady, you had questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. In the roads QMS operational plan, I noticed there's a bunch of measurement stuff, which is excellent. I mean, because you're not going to get better unless you know where you need to improve. So I left it alone for there, but I do have a couple of comments about streetlights. I think we outsourced that to someone because there's been a change in requirements for qualifications. And I'm just wondering, we're taking a bit of a beating in social media right now on lights. You know, people complaining it's taking months. In fact, in some cases over a year. We had a sign downtown Grimsby that said in Grimsby for 4 to 6 weeks. You know, do we have an SLA or an operational level agreement with this vendor to say, and with all due respect to Councillor DeFlavio says, well, we're not their only customer, and my answer to that is tough. You know, we're paying these guys, I don't know if we pay them by the light, quite literally, and I'm not being facetious, or, you know, is it a day rate, and how do we measure them? And to be fair, I also know you're using AA tracking, and we're using Mr. Compliance, or it's Mark Rady's compliance, I'm not sure. We're using Outlook tasks, and we're going to replace all this with CMMS. So I'm going to pick on Marvin in engineering because he's not here, because I think all this streetlight stuff falls under engineering. Or does it fall under you, Thomas? Yeah. I was sorry for your luck that you're on the seat again. What can we do to improve the optics of this? Because, again, we collectively we're taking a beating on the fact that it's taken a long time to change a light bulb. And there's all kinds of bad light bulb jokes running around right now, too. It's just stupid. So, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So as far as our maintenance standard for streetlights goes, we are held to, again, there is a minimum maintenance of 3 lights out in a row, or I can't recall the exact percentage along a certain way. That being said, we do try to get to them as quick as possible. I know our contractor also, tries to get them to them as quick as possible. A lot of the issue that we have had in the past, and we're sort of still trying to work through it, is just on actual supply of some streetlights. We do have certain areas in the community that have decorative fixtures out that you'll probably be aware of and see. We kind of have 2 standards throughout the town, the decorative style and then the Cobra head. The Cobra head we can get and replace quite quickly. Unfortunately, the decorative ones take quite a bit longer for us to source. So we are trying to work through some of that. There are also a few areas in the town where we have not necessarily a light out, but where there's some construction going on. We have some old styles that we're going to be replacing as a part of some projects moving forward. So we have kind of landed in a bit of a unfortunate gray area where there may be a light out that's going to be obsolete. So we're waiting until we actually do replace the entire street, if you will. But we are aware of, the time it takes to get some of these replaced, and we're trying to work with our contractor, and potentially we'll be looking at renewing or going to market to see if there's something else we can do down the road for sure. So
Sorry, just to add further, one of the things that we have found too is it seems an obvious thing, but we can put a task out or identify a deficiency to our contractor. Our contractor can go out there and check the light, and then they find out, oh, it's not a light bulb issue. We've changed the light bulb. It's not a light bulb issue. We need to send it back to staff to say it's electrical issue. We can't deal with it today, so it might be another couple weeks before we can come back and fix it. So there is some delays in that as well. But no, as Thomas echoed, we hear the complaints. We're cognizant of the complaints, and we're doing what we can to help improve that situation as well.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, for my part, what I tell people is go to this website and, fill it in so we have an electronic record. That's the other thing. Facebook does not communicate with Town Hall. Well, it does sort of, but yeah, not to get lights fixed. So I reinforce this to folks, and I think it's important that we all reinforce it to folks. It's like, thanks for telling me. Now go here and fill in this form, and there's actually a sample there that shows the information you're looking for, because all these polls have got numbers on them, and there's a picture to show here's the information we need. And it's ironic that you would bring up the exact example of one of my neighbors down the road came wandering over and said, I know you're on this thing, you need to get this fixed. And every time they come to look at the light's on, right? And then 2 days later it goes out again. And so it's the mechanic thing. So there's definitely a problem. I said to him, yeah, you got a problem, dude. I walk my dog way over there, I see it. So I think sometimes people forget that they do show up. Often during the day, I've seen them, and they look at it, and it's fine, and they leave. And then you have to put a second trouble ticket or incident in, if you will. But I was just curious to know if we have an OLA with these guys, because it's when it's time to renew, we need to hold their toes to the fire, because I don't know if there's a lot of folks out there doing this, but I realize the rules have changed.
I guess the other thing just to keep in mind is if the way it works now is the tickets or the deficiencies are grouped together, and they respond to site, if you want to call it, with a full days of work. Mm-hmm. If we were asking them to come out every time we get an inquiry about a street light, we'd be paying through the teeth, through the nose, whatever the expression is, for them to respond to every single light. So there is So it may not meet everyone's level of service, but there is some rationale as to why we don't. It's not a next day service. It's not an Amazon response, overnight response. Now, there are emergency situations where we would respond in that case, and there are provisions in our contract that would allow us to do that. But and we understand too through the COVID process and through what do you call it, issues with supply and things like that, we fell behind a little bit. I think we're caught up a lot more, and we're trying to keep that momentum going forward. But again, appreciate the comments, and we'll continue to do our best to try to address them in a timely manner.
Thank you. Good discussion, everybody. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee under new business? Anything from staff that we need to address? All right. Seeing none, the next meeting of Public Works Committee is scheduled Monday, January 22nd, 2024 at 6:30. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.